Welcome to the Spiritual Cartel Step Meeting. Tonight we are looking at steps 4 and 5. This week I am pleased to introduce Beth E. from the Atlantic Highlands area in New Jersey, who has kindly agreed to come and share with us. Beth, over to you.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth. I'm an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. It's customary where I'm from to give you my statistics before I start on 4 and 5. A loving God that I didn't think that I needed, separated me from alcohol on August 1st of 2017. I have a home group, as Andy said. It's by the book. We happen to be quite close to each other, and he's been down there before. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. My sponsor knows she's my sponsor because I actively actually engage with her. I also have a service sponsor. For the love of AA, I don't always like you, but I love what AA has done for me, and I have found that this is the much easier, softer way. So if you're not sure where Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey is, if you draw a straight line down from New York City, from Wall Street, the tip, through the water, that's where you will find where I reside. So tonight we are talking about steps 4 and 5. I'm going to start off with the book because that really is what gets me motivated here. I come out of step 3 and I've made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. But when I'm new, I don't really understand what that means. And so my sponsor brings me to the bottom of page 63 and it says, next we launching like a rocket. Next we launch on a course of vigorous action, right? Immediately. Right? I'm one of those people that if you give me an inch, I'm going to try to take a mile. Right? And this gives me specific directions here that we're not going to let me hang myself out there to dry, because what I suffer from is not that I want to use all the time. It's that I can't stand sobriety. It's like wearing the nerves on the outside of my skin, and you just really begin to bug me. So I don't allow my sponsees to sit in it, and thanks to good sponsorship, she made sure that I understood some of that language. Next we launch. I have so many sponsees, they come in and they're all gung-ho and service, and then we get to the 4th step and all of a sudden it's like, where'd they go? You know, there's the big scary monster in the room where, it was so hard to write it. And, people share things like that and people lose their momentum and then they think, well, why move on and do the rest of that? But 4 through 9 is really where I'm going to get some truth about me. And it allows me to see the truth about me and what I need to give to God. But I don't know that until I get down in black and white, what actually goes through my mind and how I just, you really bug me. So when it says we launched a vigorous course of action, the first step is which we take a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. Though our step 3 decision, right, to turn my will and my life over to the care of God was vital and crucial. Vital, meaning it's necessary for me to continue to survive without drugging and drinking. It could have little permanent effect unless followed at once. There's another direction, at once, followed by strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Blocking me from what? Blocking me from having a relationship with this higher power, because I have been my higher power my entire life, or I've made you it. I will give you more power over my mind and my emotions than I have. Put me in the fast lane. You slam on your brakes or go the speed limit. Don't you know who I am? Right? All of a sudden, I'm giving that driver in front of me more power over my mind and my emotions than I have. And I don't even know that I do that because I call it justified, because I'm good like that. I'm justified in getting pissed off at you because you could act right. You could drive a little better. Don't you know who I am? And I've really made myself to the victim to you because I don't know until I get down in black and white that I value being a victim. No idea. It says our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to the causes and conditions. I had no idea what those causes and conditions are. I just thought, you really bug me. And then I use anger with people like my mom, you know what? Because if I use anger on her, maybe I'll get her to act right. Anger felt like power to me when the book says lack of power is my dilemma. But I go straight to anger because I want some kind of power in this situation. I don't know that I do that. And so I get down in black and white and I begin to see the causes and conditions. It goes on to say a business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. So today I'm even still taking a regular inventory. That's why we have a 10th step. right? It says an inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. See, I never wanted to look at the truth. Never wanted to look at what we call the defects of character, or what I call my defenses, or AKA what I can still default to. I just went out and snorted something, smoked something, or drank something so that I didn't have to feel the way I was feeling, because you know what? I maybe have lied to somebody because I wanted them to get off my back. And so instead of looking at why I did that, why I'm a approval addiction junkie that I had to lie, I'm just going to go do something so that I don't have to feel any of those feelings, because I don't like to be uncomfortable and I don't like to own anything. So it's absolutely insane. So I have to disclose damaged and unsellable goods to get rid of them promptly without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself to values. I never had values, especially in relationships. You were cute, made me laugh, had a job, relationship. 6 months later, I thought I was Beth the Builder. I'm going to change him. You couldn't love me right. I never had values. The values that I have today are God-given, and they're little things. I got married a couple years ago, and I had to look at what we call a sane and sound ideal, which we do at the end of this, right? And I had to pray and ask God to help me with that and to reveal some of those things, but I also had to get truthful. Some of the things that I value is that you pay your taxes to the IRS, that you live responsible. I value kindness. I never knew that I valued kindness. I would get in relationships with men that were just as angry as I was. The truth is today is that I get to look at the truth of my values, and I get to look and try to align with people that match my values instead of running around with all these people and just claiming, oh, they'll get better. So it goes on and it says, we look at the exact same thing in our lives. We took stock honestly. And I had to ask God to help me honestly look at this stuff, because I never wanted to look at this stuff. Like I said, I loved anger. I thought it was power, but underneath anger is really fear. I'm afraid of something, but I use anger and I default there because it feels like power. I want power. I want to play God. I am God. And I'm going to get you to act right by manipulating you with my anger. I'm going to let you know how you need to treat me. I thought that that was the normal way of living, and that everybody just kind of did that. I never once valued peace or wanted peace in my life. I actually thought that sounds pretty boring when I came in here and people talked about, I have so much peace in my life. I'm like, why would I want that? I loved a little drama. I love a little smug superiority still to this day. Oh, they're not doing their steps right. I gotta watch for those things today, because I put myself back into judge, jury, and executioner, aka playing God, which it says in our third step. It doesn't work. So it goes on and it tells me that the first inventory that I'm going to tackle is my resentment inventory, which is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. But before it says that, it gives me a very important line that I absolutely still love to this day. It says, being convinced that self. See, in my life today, there's the little s self, which I call the ego. And then there's the capital S self today, which I call the spirit, the higher power, the God in my life. And I make choices all day long on which voice that I listen to. I didn't know that I was ego-driven. When I came in here, I thought ego meant that guy with that really nice car with the three-piece suit that just thought he was better than everyone else. But ego, aka bondage of self, is actually the piece of me that causes all the pain and suffering in my life, that brings up the past and creates a story that takes 10% of the facts. It's like Andy says to me, hey, Beth, I hate your green hair. I'm like, haha, Andy, I don't have green hair. But if Daniel says to me, you know what, I think I've seen you on a meeting before, and I think you put on 10 pounds since then. See, I'm not mad at Andy because I don't believe I have green hair. But Daniel and I have old body image issues and old ideas and beliefs on how I should look. my claws are going to come out on him because how dare you? And I'll play the victim to him because you should never say anything because I've been shitting all over the place my entire life. I should, they should, the world should. And I call those shoulds, the should monster where I'm shitting all over the place. Those are emotionally charged old ideas that I wasn't aware of that I had. And so I get to some of this stuff by putting it down in black and white where I can see a little different, these things that charge me, where I just have old ideas and beliefs, where I need you to act a certain way for me to feel okay. I also call those shoulds pride. When you think about the 7 deadly sins, pride is the deadliest of them. Right? My emotionally charged shoulds are a form of pride. Where I think I'm God and everybody should get with the program and should drive right and should act and should thank me. It's like I take the subway to work. See, there's a story. Someone steps on my toe when I'm on the subway. There's 2 stories that I can tell myself. I don't even know that I tell myself stories until I start working with a sponsor and I start getting things in my 4-step down in black and white. See, somebody steps on my toe and doesn't say sorry and just walks out the subway door. I get pissed. How dare he? He should have said sorry to me. The second story is the same thing happens. Somebody steps on my toe, turns around before they walk out that subway door and actually says to me, I'm so sorry that I did that. See, the first person I'm ticked off at because how dare you? You should apologize to me. The second person validated me. The second person made me feel okay. They acknowledged my pain. And see, I don't know that I'm driven until I get down in black and white, that I need everybody to make me feel okay about me for me to be okay. It's absolutely insane the amount of taking things personally I do, making myself a victim to others because I'm so emotionally dependent on what everybody else is doing, and I have a story. And I need you to abide by my unenforceable rules and the story that I've already written, the script that I've already given you, Tommy, that you don't even know what that script is. That's how insane I am. And I don't know it because my level of consciousness when I get into Alcoholics Anonymous is asleep. But I'm dreaming and I don't know it. I believe I'm awake. And so what the 4-step does is I begin to get down in black and white these things that drive me. So that little less self, that ego, that bondage of self, I like to use a triangle. Today, fear, anger, guilt. When I'm in fear, anger, and guilt, nothing good is going to come out of my mouth and I need to zip it. Because those things drive the defects of character. Those are the things that I'm looking at when I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, as the 3rd step says. I end up in this 4-step where I'm pissed off at you. And then it goes on to tell me, being convinced that self manifested in various ways with what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. And that's what I'm doing in a 4-step. So I start looking at these resentments and dealing with them. It says that I set them on paper. And the first 4-step that I did, it says that we get down and we look at these 7 areas of self. The self-esteem, the pocketbook, the ambitions, the personal relationships, the security, the ambitions, the sex relations. Things that really burned me up because I need something from you for me to feel okay. In Bill Wilson's emotional sobriety letter, it says that I'm looking for approval, prestige, and romance, and I need you to make me feel okay about me because I've written a whole script for you and I don't even know that I've done that. So the first time I go through, it's really easy for me to write my resentments. Anybody that I've ever been pissed off at, put the name down on paper. My sponsor is like, you got people blocked on Facebook? They belong on there. You know, and I had fun writing why I'm pissed off at you because I love telling you why they made me angry. But you see, I also have to be careful as a newcomer because I'm so dramatic and grandiose. I really want to get stuck in the muck because I like sitting in my crappy diaper and telling myself the story about what they did to me and replaying it over in my head because plenty of times, you know what, if nobody will listen to me and my sad story and all my complaining, I can come home and I can sit on my couch by myself and tell it to myself over and over and over again like a broken record player. Another form of pride. Our 12 and 12 calls that pride in reverse. I'm just going to sit in me and my self-pity. And the ego loves that because I'm spinning at the center of my own universe. It's all about singing like the opera singer. Me, 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 me. And so I look at these 7 areas of self. The first time I do it, it's like, yeah, I'm checking a box right now. Your pride. Okay. I think it's affected, but I really had no idea what it actually meant. And so the longer I'm sober, thank God for different sponsorship, and thank God for looking at things from an entirely different angle, because that's what we're doing here. We come prepared to look at things from an entirely different angle. So one of the things that I've done over the years is I've actually looked at, what does that pride mean? What does that self-esteem mean? And I'll share with you a little bit of inventory. See, my mom really bugs me. My mom's got borderline personality disorder, OCD, and you know what? She calls me a lot of 4-letter names that I'm not going to repeat here because I'm trying to work a spiritual program. And some 5-letter words. My mom tells me that I'm a horrible daughter. And so I come in here with guilt, shame, and remorse, and I don't know that. Because I'm actually got a puffed up ego when I arrive here, and I think, I'm so amazing and wonderful, you're the problem, and I would go to therapy for years trying to fix you. And so when I look at this stuff and I get it down with my mom, see, I'm really coming from this place of high self-esteem. I think I'm such an amazing daughter, so when my mom says anything against that belief, that old idea and belief, I'm going to react to that. It's the same thing where I take things personally. If Andy says I have green hair, I don't believe I have green hair. But if Danielle says I put on 10 pounds, boy, I got a body image issue. My claws are going to come out. So my mom is not validating this belief that I'm an amazing, wonderful daughter. How dare she? And so I'm back into playing the victim to my mom because I value being a victim instead of looking at, what am I afraid of? The truth is I'm afraid maybe I'm not a good daughter, especially from all those years and the things that I did when I was out there, which is why I need to go through the rest of the process and begin to make amends. Amazing stories. We won't get into it because we've only got about 20 minutes left. Pride. No one should. Others should. Everyone should see me as an amazing daughter that does everything for her. But yet my mom goes to my family and tells them that I don't do anything, that I'm a horrible daughter. And so then I have to become something other than I am to try to prove myself as a good daughter, is how I showed up to life. Today I don't have to prove anything. My truth is good enough. My truth is between me and God. But I was separated between me and God until I put these things down in black and white. I couldn't see that pride was driving me and that I got a whole script on how everybody should, because I've been shooting all over the place, because I need everybody to get the memo for me to be okay. It's like my husband has to wash the dishes here. That's his job, right? I have certain chores in the house I've been assigned. He lets those dishes go for 2 days. My hair catches on fire. I begin to tell myself a really scary story because I'm a dramatic, grandiose addict and alcoholic. The story in my head is that if he doesn't do the dishes, he will never do the dishes. And oh my God, the worst part is it'll be stuck on me. How dare he make me do the dishes? It's absolutely insane, the stories that go on where I get blocked from this channel of God and I can't show up as God would have me be because I got a story playing and it's all about me and getting what I want and what I need to be okay. Stuff doesn't make me bad, but the greatest thing about Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous is that I get awareness of this stuff that drives me. I was dead asleep. I had no idea until I put this stuff down on paper. Ambition, what I want. Well, I want my mom to be a mom. For crying out loud, love me. Don't you see all that I do for you? My mom's not capable of being a mom, but I've been assigning her the role of my higher power, and I couldn't see it. I'm powerless over changing her, but I use anger because I want to change her. And see, I'm not at peace when I'm trying to change you, which is an impossible task. I'm not at peace when I'm resisting reality. And reality only wins 100% of the time. But I'm always butting heads with reality, thinking it should be different. Security, I need others. I need you to act right, Mom, in order for me to be okay. See, I'm addicted to comfort and I don't even know it. And I don't like being uncomfortable. And see, I actually believed what my mom said about me. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I clear that channel through this fourth and fifth step, I get to the truth. In society, we say the truth will set you free. When I build that relationship with God, the truth sets me free. The truth about who I am because of whose I am. The truth is today. When I'm connected and I have an open channel to that God, the truth about me is that I am the glorious words in the St. Francis prayer. I am peace. I am love. I am understanding. I am comfort. But I'm alcoholic and an addict. I get disconnected and I get driven sometimes to default into these old things where I want something from you. And so I look at these 7 areas of self, but better yet, I get down actually what it is that I'm like. So when we talk about self-seeking, what did I do? Where did I blame people? What were my selfish actions? Well, with my mom, I tried to manipulate her with anger to get her to act right. I was absolutely never going to be able to change my mom, but that was the only way I could find some kind of power because I can't let her turn freely in this world. How dare she? Because my selfish actions was that I valued being a victim to her. And instead of looking at the stuff underneath there, that what I'm really afraid of is that now I'm not going to be loved and cared for. See, today the truth is I got to watch for these things. I'm taking on a new job. I can make bad Brad in my current job my higher power because he needs to know how much work he gave me. Doesn't he know I'm doing the best I can? And then that drives this selfish, self-seeking behaviors. I got to tell him. I got to work this angle. He's got to know. And I don't say it softly and kindly at all because I'm driven by fear that I'm not going to meet somebody's expectations. But I would have never said these things about myself. The truth about me today is that I have great work ethic. The truth about me today is that I make mistakes, but I can live under illusions and delusions. The illusion means I don't want to look at it. It's a lie. I kind of know it's there, but I don't want to look at it. The illusion is that if I never make a mistake, I'll be okay. The delusion is that if I never make a mistake, I'll somehow become perfect. We don't become perfect in this program, but what I get is a design for living that really works. This is the easier, softer way. So I look at these behaviors with a dishonesty. I will do anything to make her other than she is because she needs to act right. And so driven by these fears that drive these defects of character, these defaults, these defenses, and I don't know it. The story that I told myself was that if she didn't change, I wouldn't be okay. And so at about 5 years sober, my mom didn't show up at my wedding. And I write inventory on it. And see, I learned that I'm living in the world of the spirit, having that spiritual awakening. I am in the world, but I am not of this world. That my mom is not my higher power and my value doesn't come from who is at my wedding. My mom's name is Alice. Her name is not God. And I had to get right-sized on that. And I had to get right-sized not only on who she is, but I also had to look at our sick man's prayer. It says, they like ourselves, they like me, are perhaps spiritually sick. See, my mom is like a dog with rabies. If my little dog gets rabies, it's not the owner's fault. It's not my fault. I didn't cause the dog to get rabies. I don't blame the dog and want to beat the crap out of the dog for getting rabies. I feel compassion that the dog has rabies and I want to see what I can do to help it. But I don't stick my hand in the cage to get bit. So I learned how to show up as an adult, an emotionally mature person through help of writing inventory, through getting a connection with God to see how he would have me be, which is what the fear prayer is. I am in this role. God has assigned me the role of a daughter. I may not love my mom as a daughter should, but today I love my mom as God would have me be because I am in the world to play the role God has assigned. We live in a toxic cancel out culture. I would love to just write my mom off and that's what I thought I could do. Just put her out of my life. She's a nutty, horrible person. But God has said, no, with my power, God, you're going to rely on my strength, my direction, the million things that tells me in our big book what God does for me. And I need to stay open and connected to being able to show up as God would have me be. Because if I start thinking about how I want things to be, I'm going to be driven to show up so that I'm trying to get me okay all the time. And so we go back to the big book and I start looking at these things and I get them down on black and white. And it tells me that I disregard the other person entirely. It says to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. Later on, it says, we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. That's where I said, the world and its people really dominated us. I will give you more power over my mind and my emotions than I have. I've been walking around playing the victim going, you make me feel. There's a story in the back of the big book. In the family afterward, it says one of our friends is a heavy smoker and coffee drinker. There was no doubt he overindulged. Seeing this and meaning to be helpful, his wife commenced to admonish him about the smoking and the drinking coffee. He admitted he was overdoing these things, but frankly said that he was not ready to stop. His wife is one of those persons who really feels there is something rather sinful about this commodities, so she nagged, and her intolerance finally threw him in a fit of anger. He got drunk. Just like this guy, I walked around going, you know what, you're a real nag. You need to get off my back. And when you didn't, I chose to self-medicate. And I blamed you and ran around going, you make me feel. When no one has the power to make me feel a certain way. No one. I had to learn to take responsibility for myself. Case in point. In my inventory, as I'm writing about resentment, I got mugged at gunpoint while I was in college. I went down to New Orleans. My dad said, please don't go out by yourself. I know you like to drink. I knew it was a really dangerous place, but I have a mental obsession that despite knowing I shouldn't, thoughts are going to hijack my mind and tell me, you'll be fine. It won't be that bad. You won't drink this much, blah, 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 blah. I get hijacked by the mental obsession. I go out and have a few drinks. On my way home, I get mugged at gunpoint. And in my resentment list, what I ended up learning was that what I'm really resentful at is if I had never have sober suffering, if I never had a judgment, preference, or opinion, you would never bug me. And see, I learned when we talk about values again, I learned that what that guy did to me wasn't personal. He robbed me because of who he is. It has nothing to do with who I am. When I look at the old ideas and beliefs behind that situation, what I'm really pissed off about is because I valued my life. It had nothing to do with him, but I thought it did. So when we look at those old ideas and beliefs, the values behind it, the reason why I was really angry and still upset and carrying this stuff around, I couldn't see that there's a perverse payoff in staying at the center of my own universe all these years later. But that underneath that stuff is I valued my life. It wasn't personal. And when I was able to see that, I'm able to get to a place of clarity and have some forgiveness for something that somebody wasn't doing something to me because of me. It was because of who they are. And there's a difference here, but I'm always the victim of you and I have no idea. It says the grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. We had to be free of anger. It's poison. But boy, sometimes I just love to pick up that tug of war with you. Told you about bad Brad and cunning, conniving Connie. See, Connie's really defensive at work. She says things that are just so, she doesn't do her job right. It affects me. It's all about me. See, what happens to me in a fourth and fifth step is I begin to learn about me, and that from there I get compassion for me. The spiritual sickness in me, and I begin to see they, like ourselves, as the sick man's prayers, are driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. When I get down in black and white and I see what I'm driven by, I learn how to have compassion for people like my mom. See, the greatest gift that I got is that my mom didn't show up at my wedding. I learned that I'm not attached to things in this world, and my happiness doesn't come from in this world. I am in the world, but I am not of this world, and I'm just in the role to play the role God has assigned me. And I have to go through 4 through 9 in order to get that opening and that connection. And that God doesn't just take all these character defects away because I say 6 and 7 in the morning. My mom showed up 6 months later at my house with a bag of goodies, wanting to sweep it all underneath the carpet like she always does. And I'm able to speak my truth today lovingly and kindly when I'm open to that power in me. And I said, Mom, we can't sweep this stuff underneath the carpet anymore, and we need to talk about this. And what my mom told me, because I said to her, I feel like you're like me. They like ourselves. That you hear things and through a prism of defects of character like I do. You take 10% of what's said and write 90% of the story just like I do. Based on my past, based on what I fear in the future. And what my mom said to me was that she related in that when she was 6 years old, she wanted to kill herself, and she went downstairs and she told her parents that she didn't have a reason to live and she wanted to die. And I got to see for the first time out of my 5 years of sobriety of white knuckling trying to be a good daughter with my mom, that my mom is really perhaps that dog with rabies and she can't help it. And that she's got old wounds and old ideas and old beliefs and she can't show up any other way. And I begin to see that she's a lot of what I look like on this black and white that I put down. That she's driven by 100 forms of fear just like I am. And she tells herself a really scary story. And she's the star of that movie that she's playing, just like I can be the star of my own movie. Listen, sometimes having a hangnail is like a tragedy for me on some days if I'm not spiritually connected. And then I start telling myself stories about, Bad Brad and Connie and conniving Connie, because I can get caught up in that. I'm still human. The gift that I get in Alcoholics Anonymous, it says in the 12 and 12, Bill says, why doesn't God strike us white as snow? I think if God struck me white as snow, I'd have no reason to be in this program, and I'd have no reason to keep seeking God. That's the gift that I get, is the today that I get big islands of peace in my life. Sometimes I go for a swim, but I don't go for a swim as long or as often as I used to. So I write out this inventory and I see where were we to blame. The inventory was ours. I have to disregard the other person. And I get all these realizations the longer I'm sober and I continue to write inventory. The more I begin to see where I want the world and its people. Life would be wonderful if you just knew what your lines were and interacted with me. That I place expectations and I give people more power over my mind and my emotions. And then I look at how I don't trust God in any of this stuff. See, my mom shattered her arm last year in 5 places. She wanted to kill herself. She ended up falling down in the driveway, and the day before that I'd come home from a beautiful vacation in Montana. She'd been blowing up my phone with all this crazy stuff, and I got COVID on the way home. And we're sitting in her house at 5 a.m. dead asleep, and my mom's banging on my door like a maniac. And it's in those moments that I feel that emotional rise cropping up through my esophagus where nothing good's going to come out of my mouth. The ego's trilogy, the bondage of self, fear, anger, guilt, do nothing, zip it. I allow my mom into my house. She's nuts. I ask her if she wants to get some psychological help, wants to go see a doctor. She leaves like a bat out of hell, pissed off. And see, she blew up my phone for the rest of the day with very mean, hateful things. See, with God's power, I can see that I'm driven by fear because my mom's not approving of me. With God's power, I get to decide whether or not I'm going to be spiritual enough and capable of handling it. And God says, you're not supposed to handle it all the time. With my power, go to me, see how much you can handle in the moment. Maybe it's 20 minutes a day. And in that day, I decided that I was going to explode if I continued to allow her to text me these things. And so I blocked my mom. And the next day I get a phone call from her brother telling me she shattered her arm and is being carted off to the hospital. And the first thing I do is pick up guilt because the ego loves guilt, that trilogy, fear, anger, guilt. That's not the truth about me, and I don't want to listen to that voice, but I know from my inventory, that's where I can default to. And that I can pick up fear that I'm not a good enough daughter, and because I blocked her, I must be bad. Because underneath this stuff, the longer I'm sober, it's like the first time I do a 4-step with the resentment, fear, and sex conduct, it's like I cleared the front door to the path to the back door of a hoarder's house. But there's still boxes all along that path. And what I'm doing in this program is throughout the years when I'm writing 10 steps or going through the steps again, is I begin to take down some of those boxes so that I could see into the living room and maybe let a little light in through the window. But often what crops up for me is there's still something that starts getting real smelly and I don't know where it is. And so I have to continue to take inventory so that I can get to that smelly stuff, because what ends up happening is those character defects, what I call defenses or defaults, what they do is they end up wearing different colored shirts that I don't recognize them anymore. I would have never said I had guilt. I would have never told you that I felt that I'm not good enough. So I get to that stuff later on, but more that I do inventory as I peel that onion, and I begin to see that those things are really what's driving me. That's what drives me with bad Brad, Connie, conniving Connie, and my mom. That feeling that I'm not good enough. It's like newcomers come into the room all the time and they say they feel like they're not good enough, and I just want to shake them. You're not, because you need a God. I need to have God esteem and God confidence, and I need to give my fears over to God, but I also need to realize that men of courage still have fear, but they trust their God. I can't live in la la land that everything's going to be perfect and I'm going to be fine and I'm so spiritual now and I'm just going to slogan sling myself a let go, let God, this too shall pass. Today I get to go through the feelings and say, you know what, this sucks. But with God, everything has a beginning, middle, and an end. Sometimes I don't like how long that middle lasts. But I gotta believe today that God has a plan. The good and the bad, step 6 and step 7 talk about. Good and bad. Perhaps the bad that I've been given is the greatest asset that I have in the program to help others to say, you like me, they like ourselves. I'm just as human as you, and I'm still driven at times. But this is the easier, softer way where I get to make amends. I'll touch real quick on the sex conduct. It's not the act. My behaviors, like I said, I thought I was Beth the Builder. You couldn't love me right. You were cute, had a job, made me laugh, relationships, but you couldn't love me right. All my relationships come down to you just couldn't love me right. I expected you to live up to my standards for what I set for you. I didn't know that the golden rule is that what I do to myself is what I do to others. I have expectations of myself I couldn't live up to, so I'm going to have expectations on you that you can't live up to, because that's how I roll without God. I dismissed people's feelings. It didn't erase my need to respond, but boy, oh boy, I love the silent scorn and the I'm going to shut you out, and I'm a runner. I know it hurt people. What I do to myself, I do to you. I dismiss and I ignore my own feelings, so of course I'm going to ignore yours. I didn't know I did that until I got in the inventory. I shamed you for not doing things the way I thought you should do them, because there's the shoulds. What I do to myself, I do to you. I shame myself and my ideas of perfectionism, my demands on how things should be done, my unrealistic rules I assign to you. I alienated these men in these relationships when things started going south. I became their adversary and not their partner, because what I do to myself, I do to you. I alienate and I ignore my true self, so I'm going to ignore you. I had no idea about any of these things. The gift that I get is I take this stuff into a 5th step and I begin to see the truth, not good or bad, just human. The gift that I get today is the awareness of these things. Not that I become perfect, but that I'm aware so that hopefully when I get into step 6 and step 7, I can find these things more objectionable than I used to, because I never had any level of consciousness of this stuff. And then I know what to take to God in step 7 so I can humbly go to God and ask for a new perspective. Thank you so much for listening to me.